Hi, my name's Nicola Whitcomb and I'm the editor of the New Nordic Lexicon and Nordics Info, and I'm here in Helsinki at the Centre for Nordic Studies, and I'm on my way to speak to Peter Stadius and talk about his research to do with the Nordic region compared with other regions around the world.
My recent and would I say current research interest personally is that of pan-nationalisms with connection to Nordic cooperation and more broadly from a historical perspective. So as I am a historian.
What exactly is pan-nationalism?
Well, it's nationalism, but bigger than just one country. That might be a nation that is to be found within several nation-states, like pan-Slavism, which is often kept to be the first pan-nationalism, and we have pan-Germanism, of course, then kind of driven by one very strong state, and then there's the pan-Latinism, the idea of Latin nations, and then there is Scandinavia, this idea that the three Scandinavian nations are actually one. There are only three dialects, or four, of the same Old Norse language, which then develops into Nordic cooperation with Finland, Iceland, and so on.
What particular aspects have you focused on in your research?
If we look at the European Union, Europe at large, the current situation in international relations, what kind of needs, what kind of sympathies, what kind of connections are there? Because in the European Union, the idea was the Europe of the unions, no blocks. But we have, for example, a Club Med, which are the Mediterranean countries plus Portugal, the Visegrad countries, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. And these are blocks which are kind of not liked and tolerated within the EU. But these are blocks united by common interests. And these common interests usually come from two factors. One, the sense of thinking alike, of being similar, which is very topical for the Nordics. And secondly, perhaps experiencing similar kind of external pressures and direct threats. So I'm interested also from a contemporary point of view to look at what kind of underlying latent kind of bigger groups and potential friendships and potential affinities there are.
Peter is Research Director of the Centre for Nordic Studies at the University of Helsinki. He is an expert in civil society cooperation in the Nordic region and Nordic associations. But he also speaks Spanish fluently and has researched the view of the Nordic countries from elsewhere in the world.
I am the co-editor, together with my Norwegian colleague Ruth Hemstad, a book that deals with the Nordic experiences of pan-nationalisms. Basically, we are taking the Nordic cooperation, Scandinavianism, and try to look at it now also from a comparative perspective, meaning that develop some kind of taxonomy that what is typical of pan-nationalist movements and how might they differ, what is peculiar for the Scandinavian Nordic case. So instead of just looking at the Nordic countries kind of always from within, we always like to create more points of reference, comparative reference, and see if we can find out something new.
Why do you see it as an important subject to research, this pan-national cooperation or Nordic cooperation specifically?
Well, I think it's a way of developing research on Nordic cooperation to also have a more researched and deeper knowledge of other types of regional pan-national or macro-regional corporations. It helps to put the Nordic case in a bigger context, and we can find out meaningful things about Nordic cooperation by comparison. And one thing, mainly a main finding, if compared to other similar kinds of pan-nationalisms, classic examples, is the high grade of institutionalization already after the First World War for Nordic/Scandinavian pan-nationalism is not something that challenges the nation states, but it's rather something like an added extra arm seen positively and endorsed by the highest state authorities, politicians, civil servants, business elites. It's not some kind of a marginal movement by radical politicians, journalists, etc. It's actually quite, I would call it, institutionalized.
Formal Nordic institutions include the Nordic Council and the Nordic Council of Ministers. These exist to facilitate the discussion and coordination of policies in areas of joint interest of the Nordic countries, and take place between parliamentarians and government officials. They also pursue Nordic interests outside the region. Can you maybe link history to now? Is 19th century Scandinavianism relevant?
We are basically reliving many of the questions again and again. And now in a situation with a war in Europe and Russia is the aggressor. And that affects at least Sweden, but also the other Nordic countries. So the mechanisms are there again. What is actually exactly going to happen, we don't know. But it's clear that it has also brought a Nordic concert and the Nordic contacts up to a higher political level than, let's say, 10 years ago.